Hey there, fashion enthusiasts. Are you ready to kind of like dive into a world of ripped seams and safety pins and maybe a little bit of controversy?
I think we're gonna need more than just a safety pin for this one.
Okay.
Maybe like a whole sewing kit to piece together the story of Alexander McQueen's explosive 1994 debut collection, Nihilism.
Yeah, that's right. We're going deep into the underbelly of the fashion world with this one,
Okay.
exploring a collection that shook the establishment and cemented McQueen's reputation as a true rebel of the runway.
And we're going to do it all based on what you've shared with us, pulling the most fascinating threads from excerpts of the Wikipedia article on the Nihilism collection.
Yeah, before we get into the nitty-gritty of bloodstained cellophane and dresses adorned with
Right.
locusts,
Yeah.
let's rewind a bit and talk about the man himself.
Okay.
Alexander McQueen,
Yeah.
the working-class kid from London's East End who dared to challenge everything fashion stood for.
It's interesting how his background really seems to inform the raw energy and rebellious spirit of nihilism.
Yeah.
Because growing up in the East End, he witnessed a lot of hardship, including domestic violence against his sisters, which he later channeled into his art.
It's like he took those difficult experiences and transformed them into something powerful,
Yeah.
using fashion as a platform to confront uncomfortable truths and expose the darker side of humanity.
Right.
But before he was shocking the world with nihilism, he was honing his skills on Savile Row.
Savile Row, the legendary London street, synonymous with bespoke tailoring for the elite, where McQueen learned the meticulous art of cutting and constructing garments with precision and artistry.
And it was those impeccable tailoring skills juxtaposed with his rebellious spirit that made nihilism so groundbreaking.
Yeah.
This clash between high craftsmanship and shocking deconstructed designs. But nihilism wasn't his first foray into the world of controversial fashion, right? He had a previous collection, Taxi Driver, which also raised eyebrows and set the stage for what was to come.
Absolutely. And that's where we see the first appearance of those infamous bumster trousers, the ultra low-rise pants that would become a signature of McQueen's aesthetic. But their debut in Taxi Driver was just a taste of the provocation that was to come.
And speaking of provocation, nihilism was a deliberate rejection of the prevailing fashion trends at the time.
Right.
The anti-hard chic movement, with its emphasis on clean lines and tailored looks for women, McQueen threw all that out the window and went in a completely different direction.
He did, and I think that's what makes this deep dive so captivating, because we're not just talking about hemlines and silhouettes, we're talking about a cultural moment, a shift in how fashion was perceived and used as a tool for commentary and even rebellion.
So true. And to understand nihilism, we have to consider the context, the early 90s, the rise of grunge, a time when people were questioning authority and embracing a more raw and rebellious aesthetic. McQueen was tapping into that zeitgeist and amplifying it on the runway.
And he wasn't afraid to push boundaries. In fact, he seemed to revel in it, using unconventional materials like cellophane and even incorporating natural elements in a way that was both unsettling and thought-provoking.
Right, like that dress covered in dead locusts. It's such a striking image, and definitely not something you'd expect to see on a runway, especially back then.
Right.
But there was a purpose behind it, a connection to real-world issues like famine and environmental destruction, making a statement that went far beyond aesthetics.
It's almost like he was saying, look, I'm not going to sugarcoat things. This is the reality we live in, and fashion can be a reflection of that, even if it's uncomfortable. But it's important to remember that this was also his first official runway show, a moment of immense pressure for any designer.
Imagine that your first major collection debuting with such a bold and controversial statement in a venue like the Bluebird Garage, a place known for its gritty underground scene rather than a traditional high-fashion setting.
And he even used encyclopedia pages as invitations, embracing a DIY aesthetic that further emphasized the rawness and unconventionality of the collection. It was all meticulously planned to create a specific experience of visceral reaction, and in that sense, he succeeded brilliantly.
So he had the talent, the vision, the rebellious spirit. But what about the business side of things? Didn't he have a bit of a struggle launching his own label even after the success of Taxi Driver?
You know, it is a bit of a paradox, isn't it?
Yeah.
Despite the acclaim for his Taxi Driver collection and the legendary Isabella Blow buying his entire graduate collection, McQueen was hesitant to start his own label, it seems. The idea of conforming to the industry's expectations, the pressure of running a business, was daunting for him. It makes you wonder if perhaps he saw the potential pitfalls of success, the risk of losing his creative freedom or having his vision compromised by commercial demands.
That's such an interesting period, especially considering how uncompromising his designs were, how he refused to play it safe or cater to traditional notions of beauty. But thankfully, his friends encouraged him to take the leap, and the world of fashion was forever changed because of it.
And it's those uncompromising designs that we really need to unpack because they weren't just shocking for the sake of shock value. They were carefully constructed statements using unconventional materials and techniques that had never been seen on a runway before.
Exactly. Let's talk about that cellophane for a second.
Okay.
Using something as commonplace as plastic wrap to create these ethereal, almost ghostly garments, it was a stroke of genius, really.
Imagine seeing these models walking down the runway in dresses made of what looks like the same stuff you use to wrap up leftovers. It's such a jarring juxtaposition of the mundane and the avant-garde. And then to further subvert expectations, some of those cellophane dresses were stained with rust-colored paint, mimicking bloodstains.
It's like he was playing with this idea of fragility and violence, beauty and decay, all within the same garment. It's unsettling, it's provocative, and it definitely makes you think twice about what you're seeing.
And that seems to be a recurring theme throughout his work, this fascination with contrasting elements, pushing the boundaries of what's considered beautiful or acceptable. Then there's the dress covered in dead locusts, which is, well, a whole other level of unexpected, inspired by a National Geographic article about a famine in Africa caused by locust swarms. He took this symbol of devastation and incorporated it into a high fashion garment.
The sheer audacity of it is mind-boggling, and it's this boldness that really sets McQueen apart. This willingness to use fashion as a platform to comment on social and environmental issues, even if it means making people uncomfortable.
And it's not just the grand gestures, even in the smaller details, you see this incredible attention to detail and craftsmanship, like the story of the dress created by accident when his collaborator Simon Unglis spilled a can of liquid latex onto a drain cover.
Use a drain cover in a dress. Okay, that is peak McQueen, seeing beauty in the unexpected, embracing the imperfections. And they tossed glitter into the spilled latex, a dash of glamour amidst the chaos, a perfect encapsulation of his aesthetic.
Precisely, that anecdote really speaks to his resourcefulness and his ability to turn a mishap into an opportunity, a testament to his quick thinking and artistic vision. But we can't forget the bumster trousers, those ultra low-rise pants that made their runway debut in Nihilism and became one of his most iconic and controversial creations.
Those trousers were a statement in themselves, weren't they? Pushing the boundaries of decency and challenging traditional notions of beauty.
Yeah.
They weren't just low-rise, they were practically indecent. But McQueen had a reason for that, right?
According to McQueen, he was fascinated by the base of the spine, believing it to be the most erotic part of the body. And he wanted to highlight that through his design. So those trousers weren't just about showing skin. They were about emphasizing a specific part of the anatomy in a way that was both bold and unexpected.
It's interesting how he took something that most people would consider taboo or even repulsive and turned it into something that sparked conversation, something that forced people to reconsider their perceptions of the body and its beauty.
And that, I think, is what makes McQueen such an important figure in fashion history, this ability to challenge conventions, to make people uncomfortable, to provoke thought and discussion through his designs. It wasn't just about aesthetics, it was about making a statement.
Absolutely. Nihilism wasn't just a collection of clothes, it was a manifesto, a declaration of his intent to disrupt, to challenge, to create something that would be remembered. And remember, we do. Nearly 30 years later, we're still talking about it.
It's true, and it's a testament to his enduring impact on the world of fashion, but we can't talk about nihilism without acknowledging the mixed reactions it received, the critics who were appalled, those who stopped taking photos because they were so disturbed by what they were seeing.
Yes, it's important to remember that not everyone embraced McQueen's vision at the time. Some saw it as shocking and offensive, even misogynistic, particularly in how he presented women's bodies in his designs.
And those criticisms are valid. We can't shy away from the more problematic aspects of his work, but it's also important to consider his intentions, to acknowledge that he was often trying to challenge traditional notions of beauty and empower women through his designs, even if his methods were unconventional or even controversial.
It's a complex issue, and one that deserves further exploration. But for now, let's shift gears a bit and talk about the legacy of nihilism, the impact it had on McQueen's career and the fashion world as a whole.
It's undeniable that nihilism launched McQueen into the spotlight, establishing his reputation as a true enfant terrible of the fashion world. A designer who refused to play by the rules and whose creations sparked both admiration and outrage.
And that reputation, whether he intended it or not, became part of his brand identity. It's like that saying, there's no such thing as bad publicity, especially in the world of fashion, where controversy can often translate into fame and influence.
Absolutely. And it's not just about notoriety. Nihilism introduced several key elements that would become recurring themes throughout his career. The sharp tailoring, the use of unconventional materials, the exploration of themes like death, sexuality, and the darker side of human nature. They were all present in his very first show, laying the groundwork for a career that would redefine the boundaries of fashion.
So even though it was considered shocking and controversial at the time, nihilism was also a preview of the genius that was to come. It was a statement of intent, a declaration of his unique vision and his uncompromising approach to design.
It was a collection that said, this is who I am, and this is what I'm going to do, whether you like it or not, and the world took notice.
And it's fascinating to see how certain elements from that debut collection, like the bumster trousers, which were initially met with shock and disapproval, ended up influencing mainstream fashion trends in a way that few could have predicted.
Yeah, it's a testament to the enduring power of his ideas, how he managed to take something as seemingly simple as a pair of trousers and transform them into a cultural phenomenon, a symbol of rebellion, and a challenge to conventional notions of beauty.
It's funny how fashion can evolve like that, how something that's initially seen as scandalous or even outrageous can become so commonplace, a reminder that even the most radical ideas can eventually find their way into the mainstream, shaping the way we dress and express ourselves.
And that's the mark of a true visionary, someone like McQueen, who wasn't content with simply following trends, but instead sought to create them to push the boundaries of what was considered acceptable, and in doing so, change the way we think about fashion itself.
So nihilism wasn't just a fashion show, it was a cultural moment, a seismic shift in the landscape of fashion that sparked conversations about art, beauty, sexuality, and the role of clothing in reflecting and challenging societal norms, conversations that continue to resonate today.
Absolutely. And I think that's the ultimate legacy of nihilism, this enduring ability to make us question, to confront uncomfortable truths, to think critically about the messages embedded within fashion and the power it has to shock, inspire, and provoke meaningful dialogue.
As we wrap up our deep dive into this groundbreaking collection, I'm curious to know what you think McQueen would say about nihilism today, nearly 3 decades after it first graced the runway.
It's a question that invites speculation, of course, given his notoriously private nature and penchant for self-critique. But knowing his relentless pursuit of creative evolution, I think he might be surprised by the enduring fascination with nihilism.
You think he might downplay its significance in light of his later, more elaborate collections?
Perhaps he was always pushing forward, always seeking to outdo himself, so he might view nihilism as a youthful exploration, a stepping stone on his path to greater artistic heights. But I also believe he would be pleased that it continues to spark debate and inspire new generations of designers to challenge conventions and embrace their own unique visions.
He was, after all, a true artist. And true artists are rarely satisfied with past achievements, always striving for something more, something new, something that will push the boundaries of their craft and leave a lasting impact on the world.
And that's what makes McQueen's legacy so enduring, this unwavering commitment to artistic integrity, this refusal to compromise his vision, this boldness that challenged conventions and forced us to reconsider our preconceived notions about beauty, fashion, and the power of self-expression.
So to our listeners who may be discovering Alexander McQueen for the first time, or revisiting his work with fresh eyes, I encourage you to seek out images and videos of the Nihilism collection to immerse yourselves in its raw energy and unflinching honesty, for it offers a glimpse into the mind of a young designer who is about to change the world of fashion forever.
And even if some aspects of the collection feel shocking or unsettling, don't shy away from those emotions. Those questions that arise for great art has the power to challenge our perspectives, make us uncomfortable, and ultimately leave a lasting impression that continues to resonate long after we've experienced it.
Beautifully said. And with that, we conclude our deep dive into the provocative world of Alexander McQueen's Nihilism, a collection that marked the beginning of an extraordinary journey and continues to captivate and inspire us today. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep into the fascinating world of fashion and the stories it tells.